Hello, welcome to this segment on private party auto purchases and sales. My name is Pam, and I'm a lending specialist here with Ent Credit Union. This particular segment will focus on the seller's perspective. Once you've sold your vehicle or are in the private party market to purchase, I invite you to listen to our buyer's segment for some great tips and resources and how Ent can help walk you through that process as well. Now, selling your vehicle on your own is an efficient way some consumers prefer to do business versus trading when you're trying to get a bit more cash value from your car. But nonetheless, selling a vehicle can still be stressful and intimidating if you don't know what to expect. These are a few key points we'll focus on, because ultimately our goal is to provide you with the necessary information to proceed with confidence. There are two steps that are key. One thing to do before you sell and the best practices to follow. Like anything, being prepared is invaluable. And that leads us to these DMV steps as well, with your registration and title review, as well as transfer of ownership. We're going to cover these a few slides later and in more detail. The idea is that you're avoiding those titling mistakes to make the transition smoother with your sale. We're going to also touch on temporary tags and vehicle plates. Above all, keep in mind, patience is definitely the hardest piece of this whole process. So let's get started. Now, as I mentioned, being prepared leads to a smoother sales transaction. And here's a great place to start. Make sure you are the named owner of the vehicle on the title or registration. So for example, has your name changed? Are there misspellings? Do both owners still hold possession of the car? Or has there been a change in ownership where you need to remove somebody? These inaccuracies, can actually cause delays in transferring ownership. So getting that title corrected ahead of time is essential. I also just suggest take a copy of that registration or title. That way, should a potential buyer need a copy for their lender, you have one that is able to be given. Definitely get any service records or maintenance records you have for your car. Now, having those handy, having them accessible to show these potential buyers will show how transparent you are and how driven you are to sell this vehicle. Alongside those maintenance records, I would suggest go ahead and take care of any scheduled maintenance, but also think about having it inspected. Now, the reason I say that is our market will always have vehicles for sale, and there's always a seller who is one step ahead of somebody else. If you are more prepared and have an inspection handy to show a potential buyer, it will show them that you have already made certain that the mechanical issues are taken care of, if there were even any. Again, transparency is going to be key for showing confidence to that buyer. Now, I know that this sounds minor, but first impressions count even with cars. Make sure you wash and detail the vehicle. Get your lunch bags out of the back, make sure your planners aren't anywhere. Just making sure that it's clean and presentable is just like curbside appeal for a house. Now, one of the biggest questions that a lot of our members will ask me is, how do I know how to price my car? What do I do? What are my resources? I would suggest using Kelley Blue Book or NADA. Now, the Kelley Blue Book is usually more of a West and an East Coast book, where NADA is more of a Mountain States guide. But evaluating your car with both books will give you a great reference tool on where to price your vehicle. There are some things to consider though. I want you to think back a little bit, back to high school economics, the whole supply and demand. It comes into play when you're taking into consideration the things that will affect the value of your car. So not just sunroofs and running boards or bed liners and all-wheel drive. Things that will affect supply and demand also have a factor in how to price your car. So for example, does your vehicle have high or low mileage for the year? Is it a market saturated vehicle? Now, what I mean by that If you're sitting at a stoplight, for example, and you're looking in all directions, how many of the same car can you see? Are you seeing one or two, three or four? The more you see a certain model, the market is more saturated with that vehicle. The price is going to be lower for those vehicles because they aren't as in demand. Whereas if you find that you're selling something more sporty, four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive in a Mountain States area, you have a high demand vehicle for that particular model or package, that will definitely affect and drive the price as well. Another thing to consider when pricing, what did that mechanical inspection reveal? Was your car absolutely sound, which is perfect? Were there some minor repairs that are going to need to be done in the next 6 months? Or were there major mechanical issues coming on board? Again, food for thought when pricing your vehicle. Is there any major or minor body damage? Do you have just the normal grocery cart dings? Or is there minor bumper damage, quarter panel damage? Take a look at the actual condition of your car. What are similar vehicles selling for? Now, a good place to kind of take that into account is look online, go to different dealerships, go to the Craigslist sites or Car Trader sites. What is your vehicle or similar vehicle selling for that are in the same condition and have relatively the same mileage? It'll give you a good indicator and reference point on what you should start asking. And above all, how motivated are you to sell your vehicle? Lastly, you've determined your price. How do you get the word out there that you're selling your vehicle? Well, a great way to advertise. You've got newspapers, Auto Trader, Cars.com, Craigslist or eBay. What I would caution you on though, some sites, for example, let's say eBay or Craigslist, have been prone to have very high potential for risk or fraud with emails that are not intending to buy the vehicles, but are luring you in because it sounds like the price is right. So please, any offer that you're getting, make sure it's valid. Do your due diligence to make sure that it is an actual offer on your vehicle and not a scam. All right, congratulations. Let's say you've got this buyer. I love it. What do we do? Well, first of all, for your safety and theirs, I suggest meeting in a neutral, well-lit, populated area. First things first, have the buyer test drive your car. Make sure that it fits them, that they love it. The idea is that they are comfortable and confident that that's the car they want. What I suggest to limit your exposure or risk, be in the car with them. Nothing says you can't be. Make sure you're there, and that way you're able to see how are they driving? Are they taking too many risks in your vehicle? Again, control in that interaction will help both of you in the confidence with that whole transaction. I also suggest ask to see the buyer's ID. And I know that's not common, but what you want to make sure of is that they have a license. You do not want that liability. Now, the buyer may ask to have the car inspected, and actually, I recommend it. This is where having your lovely vehicle inspection that you've already had done will come in handy. It's a great way to show how your car stands out from others. And again, it shows that you are motivated to sell. For your peace of mind, what I would suggest is ask where do they plan on taking the car for that mechanical inspection. That way you can make sure it's a verifiable place of business, that it's certified and licensed, and it helps limit your exposure to possible theft or fraud. It might prove even beneficial to ask if you can take a picture of their ID, and that way you have some recourse. Lastly, prepare a bill of sale. The bill of sale will indicate the purchase price of the vehicle and any equipment that comes with that purchase. It might also include any warranties you're transferring to them, or, in the opposite sense, that it is not inclusive of any warranties. It's important that you mention that. But, word of caution, never sign or pre-fill in that bill of sale in case that transaction falls through. All right, this is the one. This is it. Your car is the one they want, hands down. What do you do? First of all, provide a copy of the front and back of that title or your registration to that buyer. It's going to assure them that you are the rightful owner and legally able to sell that vehicle. If you have a loan, get your 20-day payoff. Review the payoff to make sure that you don't need any additional cash to pay it off. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you have a $15,000 loan on your car, but you only are selling it for $13,000. You still owe $2,000. Without that $2,000 being paid off, your lender cannot release that title, and so your buyer cannot buy that car completely. What I would suggest, talk to your lender or call us. See if there's a personal loan arrangement you can make to pay off that difference so you can complete the sale of your vehicle. And most importantly, how will this buyer pay you for your car? If they're paying cash, ask the buyer for certified funds. Above all, do not accept personal checks. If they prefer to pay in cash, here's a great suggestion. See if they have a local bank. You can meet them there at their bank and have a teller actually distribute the funds to you. And that way you don't have any worries of counterfeit bills or money orders. If your buyer is financing, be prepared that you may need to attend a closing. Ent, for example, has all owners on the title be present, so our DMV experienced processors can help with the ownership transfer and paperwork. Some lenders won't have you be present, but you may need to still provide a copy of the title or registration. Now, as I mentioned, additional owners of collateral will need to be present because they have to sign their release of interest in that car. They have to acknowledge that it's being sold. The buyer is going to ask you to correct any name changes, or their lender may. And again, this is why reviewing your spelling and correcting any inaccuracies is important. So for example, was there a divorce and the title is still joint? Do you need to change that? If there was a deceased owner, have you applied for a new title? Have you gotten married and you need to change your name legally to match your license? DMV is actually going to be your best resource on what documentation is needed in those situations. Now, what if you have a duplicate title? We're all human. We lose things. If you don't have your original title, you can certainly get a duplicate. What you want to make sure of is that you're reviewing it not just for those inaccuracies and errors in spelling and ownership, but is there a lien still reporting on the face of that title? Is your lender's name still on there? Now, a duplicate title is basically just a mirror image of the original. So if there was a loan on it originally, it's very possible that that loan company still shows on your title. What you can do is contact your lender that originally had it financed and get what's called a lien release. That way you can take that lien release from your lender and your title to DMV and get a new title with no lien on it at all. All right, you've verified your title. It's clean, it's accurate. What's next? If the buyer is paying cash, let's see, how do we transfer the ownership on that title? Number one, again, secure location is important. If you're looking for a neutral environment, the local DMV or your finance institution can help. Bring your bill of sale. I suggest 2 copies, one for you, one for the buyer. I also recommend getting the buyer's name, phone number, and address for your records. Definitely bring your title if you own it outright. And you're going to be looking for the transfer of ownership sections so you can list your name as seller and theirs as buyer. Here is your caution point. Take your time. There is no prize to fill out who can fill it out faster, who can fill it in the best. What's happening is you are both acknowledging the sale amount in the odometer. So as seller, you have to print and sign exactly as your name appears on the title. Errors can potentially void the entire title, and as a seller, you'll have to get a new one. So taking your time is important. If the buyer is financing, their lender may reach out to you to schedule an appointment for you to be there where they can help prepare the documentation. Not all lenders provide this service, but again, it's good to be informed and be prepared. All right, I told you we're all human. Well, mistakes do happen on these titles, and panic usually starts to set in. So let's see if there is a way that we may be able to still move forward. What you want to do again, first and foremost, take your time. But if there is an error, there may be a form called a statement of fact that can be completed. I would recommend contacting DMV to make sure that your local area will accept that. A statement of fact will allow the person who made the mistake to put a single line through the error and correct it. Part of that statement, though, is that it is explaining there was no fraud intended and signed under penalty of perjury. The reason for this is that there are cases of fraud with transferring titles. DMV is very particular. So making sure this form is available, point number one. Two, making sure it's done correctly is going to be essential. What usually cannot be changed is the odometer. So no alterations at all when it comes to that odometer field, or you will have to get a new title, which can postpone that sale transaction. What I would suggest is please do not sign your title off prematurely in case the deal falls through. If you have already signed off your title and you've put the sale amount in and the odometer and you're getting ready to sell, that buyer all of a sudden says, I can't do it, you're not going to be able to use that title for your next possible buyer. The mileage will be different. Your purchase price could be different. It just would behoove you to not touch the title until you're at the time of sale and transferring that ownership. Again, be prepared. Now, let's reverse the scenario a little bit. What if you have a loan on the car? What happens? How do we transfer ownership since that title isn't in your hand? Well, number one, is there a difference on the loan amount versus what you sold it for? Call your lender. Double check. How does your lender release titles? This is important. Not all titles are housed or are in the same location as your bank might be. It could be held out of state at a corporate office, or it might even be an electronic title. What's happening, for example, Colorado has gone away from paper titles. Most lenders are holding electronic liens. What that means is once a loan is paid in full, your lender then notifies DMV to send out that title. If you need it ahead of time or more efficiently since you're selling it right away, once it's paid in full, you can ask your lien holder for what's called a lien release. I mentioned this earlier, and it lets DMV know that we as a lender have signed off interest in that car so you can get a paper title. When you have that paper title, if you're not able to go the same day and you get it, let's say, in the mail, or you have to wait a few days, make sure you arrange to meet the buyer at a later date when you do have that title. Now, as a seller, just please be understanding with the buyer. If they're paying cash, they're not getting a title right away. It poses the highest risk of uncertainty to them. Knowing ahead of time how your lender holds the title will make everybody more comfortable with the process. So definitely ask your lender, do they have the title? What is the best means for your transactions to get that title? All right. In all of the excitement, you have sold the vehicle, you've paid it off. What do? You want to make sure you're releasing complete interest and liability. Well, you've got tags and plates. Step number one, have a screwdriver or something with you to take those plates off that car. Do not let the buyer drive off with your plates. And here's why. If you do not remove your plates, you are putting yourself at risk. So for example, you forgot to remove your plates from the vehicle. and the buyer drives recklessly and, let's say, causes an accident and possibly even leaves the scene. The only identifying information that someone was able to gather were your plate numbers. What do you do? Legally, that plate is tied to you, not the new buyer. In those situations, having a copy of that bill of sale is going to be essential. But ideally, not having those plates on the car at all is your best scenario. Remember, DMV will issue temporary tags to your buyer. Don't take the chance and put yourself at risk and expose yourself to that liability. Definitely remove all your belongings. I know I had a member come in one day and brought in a bag hoping I could help that had one of our members' belongings from the car they just sold to them. We had some CDs, a daily planner with about 6 months worth of appointments in there. It was funny, but definitely would have been harder for you as a seller to gather those things back. Contact your insurance agent. Get the vehicle off your policy. Now, these bottom 2 points are most often overlooked. If you had purchased gap coverage through your lender or from the original dealer, you want to make sure that you call and see if you can get a prorated refund on that coverage. Some gap policies will allow you to get a partial refund since you didn't need to carry it the full term of the loan. If you have a warranty, ideally, see if you can transfer it to the buyer. Having a warranty you can transfer can be one of those points that make or break who that buyer buys a car from. If you're not able to transfer the warranty or choose not to, don't forget to call and see if you can get a prorated refund on your warranty as well. Now, how can selling to a buyer who is financing with Ent make this easier for you? Well, I am glad you asked, because many lenders don't assist their members with the DMV sale or transaction. This leaves you exposed until the buyer can actually correctly complete all the necessary paperwork. So you can only imagine if they need to file out of state, it's going to take even longer to release your ownership. And quite honestly, it leaves a lot of room for error. If they are financing with Ent, we're going to give you certified funds. You can get that payment in confidence. If you have it financed, we're going to take care of getting the title from your lien holder, and we will mail your payoff. We have DMV experienced processors that can help with the ownership and preparation of all of those DMV papers to transfer ownership correctly and without those errors. We're preparing the bill of sale for you. You're in a neutral environment, so you know what you're doing is in a professional setting as well. The idea is, whether you're coming to Ent or somebody is buying cash for your free and clear title, you want your experience to be smooth and easy, not one of those nightmares you hear about. Now, I encourage you to utilize Ent.com on our resource pages, and you can print our selling checklist. It's a great way to keep yourself prepared, and you can print them off as often as you need. Thank you again for listening, and don't hesitate to call us when you're ready to buy. Thank you.